Okay, it looks like our kind of initial group of people has joined, so maybe we'll get started and then people will file in. I'll stop sharing the welcome screen. There we go. So hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited for this panel. My name is Maggie King. She, her pronouns, and I work for the Interior Alaska campus. And we're really happy to have Blanche Sam and Haliehana Stepetin join us today for this panel. I'm calling in from the Trothyeta campus on Lower Tanana Dene land and want to express my gratitude for the past, present, and continued stewardship of Indigenous peoples all over this state. And I also want to shout out that I'm wearing Qigiiġun beadwork earrings. I feel like today's the day to shout out the earrings that we're wearing. And I'm so appreciative of all the amazing artists in this state who share their work, and excited to hear from two of them today. So we'll be having introductions from our panelists and then move into a moderated conversation. Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be answering audience questions for the last 10 to 15 minutes, but you can drop your questions anytime. If you have any tech problems, please chat me, or I'll drop my email in the chat so we can make sure that you can hear, and then we will be recording this event. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Jessica Black to get us started.
Wonderful. Dringwinzi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's so awesome to have everybody joining us today during Native American Heritage Month. Shojri Jessica Blackoji, Gwichaje Gotsan Itli, Gatanan Gwichi. I'm from Gwichaje, Fort Yukon, but I live and reside on the traditional homelands of the Lower Tanana Dene, the Chinahultani people, and here on Trothyeta campus. And I am so grateful for their past, present, and future stewardship of these beautiful lands, and honored to work here. I am wearing, is it Dene Designs earrings today to honor all of the beautiful artists out there, including the two we have with us today. We're so very grateful that you're joining us, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. So our panelists will be sharing, introducing themselves, sharing, and then towards the end of the hour, we'll open it up for audience questions. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Blanche Sam to introduce herself, and then we'll go to Haliehana, and then we'll start the discussion.
Hi, my name is Blanche Sam. I'm from Hughes, Alaska. I'm Koyukuk, Athabascan, and Inupiaq. I grew up mostly in Hughes. I had to leave for high school. And then I've been studying off and on at the university since 1998. I have a couple of associate degrees, and I'm currently studying art. I'm a full-time artist and full-time student, full-time mom. This is Harper. Say hi. Hi. And let's see. Yeah, that's me.
Basti, thank you. Haliehana.
Ang Alaĝum Ayagaa Stepetin, Unangax Akutanam Ilaran, Angechtakok, Arachtakok, Danainam Tanangin Kuchen and Rarizak. Hi everybody, my name is Haliehana Alaĝum Ayagaa Stepetin. I'm Unangax, and I was born and raised in my village, Akutan, in Unangam Tanangin in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. I currently live on Dena'ina lands in what is known as Anchorage, Alaska, and I am an instructor of Alaska Native Studies at UAA, and I'm a PhD candidate in Native American Studies at the University of California, Davis. My studies are in Native American Studies, and I have a designated emphasis in performance and practice studies. And yeah, I'm an Unangax dancer and a poet, and I just love Indigenous arts. I'm wearing earrings by Maka Monture Paki Munchur today, and also a necklace, ivory, all ivory today by JQA Designs. Karasakok, I'm happy to be here.
Masit Cho, to both of you, amazing leaders and people. And when I think of you both, I just have so much love and respect for you. I have a pair of Blanche earrings that are my favorite to wear when I'm dressing up. And Haliehana, one of your poems, well, I've heard many, but one of them just like touched my heart. And I always use the word indigenuity. And I always think of you when I use that word and I explain it to people and they love it too. And I'm like, that comes from Haliehana Stepetin. So just have so much love and respect for you both. I'm going to be asking some questions and it's more of just like a conversation. So I'll start with you, Blanche, and then we'll move to Haliehana. Can you start by describing some of your creative outlets? When did you start expressing your creativity and how does it show up in your life today? So any of those questions you're welcome to touch upon.
So when I was a kid, I was really creative, and I don't really remember it, but I did. One of my old teachers found my art at it was a drawing and a painting that I did from when I was I think in the 3rd grade. So I had a lot of like creativity when I was a child, but I didn't really, I guess it didn't manifest in my life until later. I started beading again in 2016, just making earrings. I went to AFN and I was looking at all the arts and crafts tables and I was looking for earrings and I was like, I really like these earrings, but I really want a style that's my own, that I feel like represents who I am and my style. Like more modern mixed with traditional. So I started beading in 2016 and I was posting them on my social media and people started asking to buy them. So it just kind of grew from there. So mostly through beading, I really, in the last 2 semesters, I've been at UAF. I've been learning different mediums. I did drawing, which it was really challenging and really, I really loved it. Like I got lost in it. I could do it for hours without realizing that I'd been drawing for hours. And I did photography and I really enjoyed that as well. This semester I'm learning to do 3D, like we've done sculptures and working with wire. But it's been an exciting process to learn because I feel like creativity was a part of me, but I didn't know how to express it. And I feel like I'm learning how as I'm in school. And it's really, really just exciting and fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Blanche. I'll turn it over to you, Haliehana. If I need to repeat the questions, please let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I think that a lot of what Blanche says also rings true for me. Like I'm an Unangax dancer, but we did not have Unangax dance in my village growing up. It had stopped, it had fallen asleep for a number of years. A lot of people attribute it to the World War II internment of Unangax people. And so we didn't dance for a while. So growing up, I remember the first time I saw Unangax dancers, it was the Atka dancers from Atka. They came to Akutan when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I remember they taught us this dance, the Esurich dance, the seal dance. And I learned it and I danced that dance everywhere. And I pretended to be a seal everywhere I went. And I knew then that I was going to be a dancer. It was just something that made me so excited, and also frustrated. Like I was upset that we didn't have dance in my village, and this concerned me. And now today we do have a dance group, the Akutan and we started that in 2012 at a culture camp, and now they exist. And I also create all of the regalia that goes along with Unangax dancing. It's funny though, because as a kid, like I was creative, like Blanche was describing, but I was a subsistence practitioner. I just wanted to be outside. I just wanted to be fishing with my dad, and I just wanted to be on the ocean. And these were the things that inspired me and continue to inspire my poetry and like my dance choreography and composition. Everything for me is interrelated with the water and the ocean, and our existence as Unangax people, as ocean people. So I didn't start skin sewing and beading until I remember when I joined the Athabascan dancers. I lived in Athabascan when I was young. I was maybe 11 or 12. And I learned how to sew, but I hated it. It was like, no, I don't want to sit inside and sew. I want to be outside. I want to be on the land, and I want to be on the water. You just couldn't get me to do it. I would be so slow, and I was just like, oh God, do I have to? I would do it in school. Like we had the hour in school where we would do it. And I learned Unangam Tunu there too. It was so cool. We also didn't have Unangam Tunu, my native language, in my village. That had ended with my grandparents' generation because of the US assimilationist boarding school policies that forbade and punished the use of our language in school, even in Akutan village. So my dad didn't speak it. And this was another thing. I was like, man, I want to know Unangam Tunu, and I want to dance, and I want to do these things. So then later, as an adult, Jolene Pettigrew, who helped revitalize the Athabascan dancers with Ethan Pettigrew, they began, or she taught me how to skin sew. She taught me how to make my own sach, my own regalia and headdresses. Kathleen Nevzaroff in Athabascan taught me too, but she just did it for me. She knew that I wouldn't finish it. And it's funny now because I love skin sewing, and I love making things that are my own and sort of expressing my individual autonomy through my dance and through my art. And this is something that I think that all Indigenous communities value, like the autonomy of the individuals within the collective. And I've always loved that because I don't bind myself to notions of traditional or contemporary in anything that I do, and instead understand the enduring nature of time and how, we're still here, and we're still creating, and we're still living and doing things with what we have. And so to me, that's traditional. Like I don't even use those words to characterize my dance or anything, because I feel like it puts me in a vacuum, that if I don't comply with what maybe a colonial gaze might understand as traditional, then I don't exist as Unangax, and I don't, that doesn't sit well with me. So I've refused that in a lot of my work, but yeah. So today I would say that it's been tricky to balance being both a scholar and an artist. And I always find myself pulled, or at first I would find myself pulled between the two. Like, do I have enough time to make art? And if I'm making art, then I can't read and write. So instead, I just make all of my writing and the things that I read and the things that I'm reproducing in citations stem from creative places and be creative works in and of themselves. So my PhD dissertation is actually a creative dissertation where I'll be both creating song, dance, poetry, and doing subsistence work while writing about it in a creative and critical way. So I'm really thankful to be in this place where I feel like both of these sides of me are nourished and fed.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. I so much resonated with what you both said. And it'll lead into the next question, but my little girl is super creative, but that's not what's really nourished in school. And so you all have just, you know, lit a fire in me in ways I can make that possible for her. And I do through our own singing and dancing and her, like just nourishing that part of her. But it kind of leads into this next question of who were some of your teachers growing up? And you both touched upon this. Where did you learn some of the ways of creating art that you use today? So maybe just building upon any of that. So Blanche?
So in school, I think it was mostly in school that I learned, because we did a lot of, we'd have visiting artists at our school in Hughes. Dave Garish was one of them. I remember his name. He was, he taught us how to draw. And I remember like feeling like he left a big impression on me. And I really enjoyed what we did. And then we also had in school, they had a program where they had our, like my grandma and my grandma's sister, my other grandma, and a few of my aunts. And there were a lot of grandmas that came in to the school, and they taught us how to skin sew. They taught us how to bead. My aunt Hazel actually taught me how to make earrings for the first time. So it was mostly in school, but it was also just growing up with it, because I every household at Hughes, like you'd always see people with beads, and all the older ladies were always beading. My grandma beaded, my great grandma beaded. My mom beaded, but not as much, but she'd bead for the memorial potlatches that we held. So it's just always been like a part of my life. And I just grew up around it.
Awesome. Yeah, I love, you know, just growing up in the villages, that our communities are such an important part of our schools, and, you know, really welcomed and honored to come in and teach alongside the teachers. And that's so, I was just right there with you, Blanche, as you were describing having your grandmas there at school with you and how important that is. So thank you. Haliehana?
Yeah, so I already mentioned some of my teachers, but I will reiterate that it was Ethan Pettigrew and the Atka dancers who first taught me Unangax dance. So I'm eternally grateful to them for welcoming me in, because I'm not from Atka, I'm from Akutan, and Atka's like far away from Akutan in the Aleutian Islands. And it's a different dialect too of Unangax. So my dialect Qigiiĝun is no longer spoken, but Nirorem is, and that's the dialect that I'm learning and that I teach at UAA too, with my teacher, Moses Dirks. Moses Dirks has also been a mentor and teacher of mine in many ways, not just Unangax, but cultural processes and protocols and subsistence hunting and fishing. And he was the first person that I asked when I was beginning to do new things with Unangax dance, right? I wanted to make sure that I was going about my creative processes in a really respectful way, following protocols of citation, where I cite that I learned Unangax dance from the Atka dancers and Ethan Pettigrew. And that this was something that wasn't like disrespectful, like really wanted to go forward knowing that what I was doing was okay. And Moses said to me, the best thing that it stays with me to this day, he said, we were always contemporary. And I was like, okay. And then that was the end of the conversation. So I understood at that what I was doing was okay. And it was because of the mentorship and guidance that I received from Dr. Maria Williams, who's Tlingit at UAA, that I started expanding into performance arts. She was just like we're going to do it. And she helped orchestrate my first ever performance arts pieces that we created as like a multicultural Alaska Native group and with UAA students who weren't Alaska Native, where I was dancing and we had instrumentation, like we had pieces of artwork, Alvin Amoson's art, and just like this whole multimedia experience that I was like, oh my gosh, this is possible. It didn't seem possible for me growing up. Like I didn't know, like my mom put me in ballet and I hated it. I was like, wow, I'm not going to be a ballerina. I'm not going to do that sort of dance. I want to do Unangax dance and something that feels good to me. And this is Unangax dance too. And it feels good to me to be able to continue creating in the present and collaborating with other Indigenous peoples. Like, I think that's been so profound and has been something that I've continued to do throughout my academic work. So in my master's program, I created a capstone that was a multimedia performance. Like they let me do that as my master's. I was like, wow, where I like curated this performance arts piece between my dance partner, Dustin Newman, who's Unangax, and Arlene Neskahai, who's Dene, and this was on Duwamish lands in Seattle at UW. Delia Gomez, who's Yaqui, and she's an amazing poet. She's been doing all of this poetry ever since. And Sierra Campbell, who's of Salt Lake Crow. So we just mixed our dance, and also Sarah Systream, she's Hannah's Coos, created a painting for us to like dance around. So I find these sorts of collaborations and like learning from other Indigenous creatives to be like my favorite thing to do, where we get together and we just create something that feels good and resonates with us. And this is the center of my PhD studies, because all of these performances, which I noticed later, all center around kakamiro, subsistence processes. And I was like, wow, subsistence is the center of our cosmology. And so now that's what I'm like really studying and researching, and it lends itself well to performance and practice, because subsistence is an embodied archive. It is an embodied art form, which I don't think Alaskans are saying, right? I'm like, man, I want to look at it that way and I want to study it that way.
Yeah, awesome. You both are just bringing back such precious memories for me, and thinking about, Haliehana, I was put in ballet too, and I was like, this is not for me. But when my grandmas and my grandpas would grab my hands and like help me dance and sing to me, it was just like everything. So, we know who we are and we know what's important, and just both of your sharing is just bringing back such amazing, good, happy feelings, and how important that is, to who we are and our identities and our communities and other people in the world, right, to learn and be inspired by. So thank you both. The next question is, how do you go about sharing your art, and what does it mean to you to pass down your knowledge or your work with others? And so it's sort of a two-part question, the first being how you share it, and you both have touched upon that, but the second part is of passing down the knowledge. So Blanche?
So I share my art mostly through, I do photos on social media. I sell my jewelry that I make. This weekend I'll actually be teaching a beading class at FE. So it's the first time that I'll be doing that. I'm excited and nervous, because I've been asked a lot to teach different classes or do instruction on beading. And I've turned them all down, saying that I'm busy, but it's mostly like I'm not practiced in it, so I don't really know what to expect. So I think this will be an in-person class tomorrow that I'll be doing. So I think it'll give me a good opportunity to practice, and hopefully I'll be able to share what I know about beading more in the future with I would love the opportunity to travel to schools, to villages to teach beading. That would be amazing. I am hoping that my daughter will pick it up if she's interested in it. But I'd love to teach Indigenous children like how to bead and how they can make a living off of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so exciting, Blanche. And so for our listeners out there, Effie Cochran Charter School is a charter school here in Fairbanks, and most of the students are Native. And so that's so exciting, Blanche, that I remember when I would have Native people come into school, even though I lived in the village, it was just so awesome to have a Native person, just because even if not a lot was said, we all kind of had some similar values and just ways of carrying ourselves. And I have my first keychain I made with a Native teacher, and it's so cute to look at. Like my beading was uneven, but it's really special to me because I remember that time. So I'm so excited that you're doing that, and the students will just really enjoy it, I'm sure. Haliehana, would you like to share a little bit about passing down knowledge and also sharing your art?
Yeah, I would say that I mostly share my art on Instagram. I share some like snippets of dance videos and multimedia productions. I've gotten really into like blending mediums as I get older, and especially during the pandemic, it's been really fun to like create with other people in virtual spaces and to share those creations. And it's funny because I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I am not trained in Adobe or any of these things that people use to create multimedia productions, but it's just fun for me to play with and be creative with. So I share a lot of dance and poetry and information like Unangax cultural knowledge on Instagram, and in like dance spaces if I'm invited to them. Of course, because of the pandemic, I haven't been doing much dancing or like sharing or creating. Like I really have been thinking about that. Like, man, I want to collaborate with some folks and create some performances again. But when it goes to like what does it mean to pass down my knowledge? I am a big fan of rematriating knowledges, especially those that are held gatekept in archives that are not accessible to communities. And I believe that a lot of our knowledges that I interact with in the academy fall under that category. And so I go to my communities and I talk to my community members about these things, and I post about them on social media and the things that I'm learning. And I think, and I presence also Unangax and Indigenous knowledges in my curriculum. And for me, this is an act of epistemic justice, justice for the ways that our knowledges have been pushed to the margins in the academy. So I love teaching in Alaska Native Studies because it's a place for me to just start from Unangax knowledges as the foundation and not as a periphery. Right. And it's such a liberating space for me to do that because I wasn't afforded that in my upbringing. Like, it sounds like your guys' village schools were amazing. Not that mine wasn't. It was just the teachers that they brought in were from the outside, they weren't from the community. I think now more people from the community are hired as like teachers' aides. But that wasn't a thing when I was growing up. And I started questioning that very early on. And this is probably when I knew I would end up where I am today, disrupting these limiting spaces of knowledge production and, making a seat for us and our ways of knowing in the academy. Because I just think about the little girl that I was, like just thirsty for Unangax knowledge and thirsty for Unangax art and dance and language, and I didn't have that. And I just want to feed that to our youth and to the next generation and let them know that even if they're coming to it in their college career, like I want them to feel safe in coming back to who they are, and knowing that it's a safe place where we're always going to start from our knowledges and not other ways of knowing first. I know that was sort of a roundabout answer, but yeah, that's how I approach it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just wanted to say that I too didn't have a lot of Native teachers. In fact, I was just thinking that most of our teachers who taught us our knowledge were teachers, aides, or volunteers who came in after school. So I share that experience with you, and it really resonated what you said about like centering it in the way we teach today, and how important that is. And just, where there's so much within our cultures that, we've always been teachers to each other. And we do know so much just from our own upbringing and our epistemology. So I'm just so grateful that you're, instructing, and that for your students who have you, and just that's so important in this work we do. All right, this next question is, how does your art and creativity factor into your identity? How do you carry your identity with you in your work? And again, these questions are all interrelated, so you've probably touched on pieces of these, but I think this is a really important question. So Blanche?
Let's see. I feel like I'm an eternal being, and then I'm a mom, and then I'm an Indigenous person and an artist. So that's who I feel like I am. That's the person that I am. For a long time, I was just a being, and I didn't have all of those things. That I wasn't a mom before 2016. I wasn't an artist. Well, I was an artist. It wasn't out there, I guess. And I've just really, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been nurturing this person that I've become, and trying to learn everything that I can about art, and about like my history, my family. I learned a lot growing up from my parents. They're really, really traditional. So I just carry all of that with who I am today. I don't really, it's just a part of who I am. So
Yeah, and I'm a Blanche Sam earring buyer, and I love your work, Blanche. And one of the earrings that I also have a really fancy gold pair, and then I also love your Northern Lights design. And I always felt really connected to those, because when my grandparents passed away, the Northern Lights were just so vibrant and amazing, and they connected, like they came across the sky and they connected, because they died, really close together, I think within like 6 months. And I just felt like they were joined, and they were letting us know. And every time I saw those Northern Lights earrings, I just felt like so connected to your work through my grandparents. So, art speaks to people in different ways, and the brilliant artist that you are, just really touches a lot of people, and it just makes me have such positive feelings when I see your art. So thank you. Haliehana?
Blanche, that was such a beautiful way to talk about who you are. I'm just like still processing that. That was so beautiful. Okay, so what was the question?
Yeah, so how does your art and creativity factor into your identity? How do you carry your identity with you in your work?
I would say that I have to assert to myself that I'm an artist and a scholar. And this is giving myself permission to infiltrate my scholarship with my art, right? Because I felt like for a long time, those two weren't able to be together. And it was Dr. Maria Williams who was like, no, you're both an artist and a scholar, and you can be, like, you can do this. So it took me a lot of time to give myself that permission and to take up that space in my academic programs where I'm like, no, I'm not going to write a 20-page research paper about this. I'm going to dance about it. And for people to be like, oh yeah, that is a valid way of knowledge production. That's fine. You can do that. And I was like, thanks, but I wasn't asking permission. Like, I'm giving myself the permission to assert that these are valid ways of knowing, and that our knowledges, Unangax knowledges, are embodied, and they are transferred through these mediums of embodiment, through storytelling, through being with each other on the land and the water, through eating together, through hunting together, and all of these things. And so for me, it's really important to refuse this walking in two worlds binary that a lot of people assume that Native people are doing. And I am like, no, it's one world. Like, both of my eyes are Unangax. Like, I'm looking at everything from an Unangax lens, and I'm making these spaces that might not be considered Unangax by being in them, and we all are. So I feel like needing to walk in two worlds is further fractioning myself out in ways that blood quantum would require us to do so, right? I'm like, no, that's not what my work does. I'm going to be Unangax everywhere I go. So I think that I'm really, really grateful to my dad and my aunties, who were just strong matriarchs, and my dad an upholder of the matriarchy, to making me feel okay doing that, and to making me feel supported in doing that, because I look to them as role models for being that way, for being entirely Unangax everywhere they go, and unapologetically Unangax. So I carry that with me, and that's who I am.
Thank you. That's so beautiful, and just, again, just really connecting with what you're saying. And, you know, and especially as scholars, artists, and just our Indigenous selves in academia, you know, it just, when we are unapologetically ourselves, we shares and transcends with our students who do the same, and share fully who they are, and teach us as, you know, their instructors and their classmates. So I think that's just so amazing. Thank you. The next question is okay, so it's a 3-part question, but you could just speak on anything you want. It's about well-being. How do you define it, and what do you do to care for yourself and your community? So, you know, there's the defining part, but you could just speak to anything around well-being for yourself and community. Blanche?
So for me to be well, I feel like I have to create, I have to learn, I have to be like a part of and involved in my culture. I have to take care of my home and my daughter. I like for today, for example, before this meeting, I was like, I don't want to feel anxious or nervous. So I cleaned my house, and then I sat on the couch and did a guided meditation. They're just like, and then like, I feel like another part of that is being nourished, and I have to have like Indigenous food. I love moose meat. Like, once in a while, I'm just like, oh, I need to eat moose meat. So it's like just a part of who I am, and a part of what it takes for me to feel well. I love love learning. I really love learning. I feel like it's going to be a part of my life for forever. I mentioned that I've been studying at the university since 1998. I have a couple of associate's degrees. I was close to getting a degree in psychology, and I'm currently studying art. So I feel like learning is just a big part of me being happy and growing. And I really love learning and being creative. Like beading, sitting and beading is like another form of meditation for me. It's calming, and it allows me to sit and process things that I'm going through, whether it be grief or happy times. I love beading, and yeah, that's.
Thank you. Yeah, when you were describing our native foods and just needing it, it's just, it's just so much of who we are in that connection. So it's like yummy, but it's also, nourishing our spirit. And when I was going through my doctoral program and I'd have a big exam, I'd always eat our native food. I just felt like it was like the power of our native food to help me. And so really resonating with that, Blanche, thank you. Haliehana?
Yeah, native foods are also a big part of my well-being too. Just this morning, I was thinking about dry fish and chaduk seal oil. And I was like, man, I can't believe I didn't make any dry fish this summer. What was I thinking? And because that's all I've been wanting this past week is some dry fish and chaduk. I have chaduk, so I just sprinkle that on everything, the seal oil, which for me, it's not just about consuming something to be full, but it's about having that connection and tasting home and remembering all of the times you shared those meals with your family, because I also feel like I'm violating some unspoken taboo when I eat these foods by myself. What am I doing not sharing this? So I'll take a couple bites. Yesterday I was working on something and I was like, man, I really need some brain food. So I busted out the smoked fish. And it's also why this is the focal point of my studies, is I think that our well-being, at least my well-being, is rooted in our subsistence processes and everything that includes. When Blanche, you're talking about meditating with beading, I was like, yeah, I go to the ocean and meditate as I'm fishing with my cousins. And it's funny because I was home this summer doing that. And it's just, me and my cousin Richard, my fishing partner, we just can get up in the morning and be out there all day. And 12 hours later, come back and for hours process fish and just be so happy doing it and sharing the fish. And then I learn so much every single time that I'm with him and with anybody out there doing subsistence processes. I just learn so much, and you hear things with new ears every time, and you notice things with new eyes every time too. And I'm it's just so rich. And definitely the thing that keeps me going through the winter. I always am okay, in the summertime, I'll be on the ocean and I'll be fishing. So everything will be fine. And I'll be home, I'll be with my family. So well-being for me isn't something that it can easily be deconstructed and quantified, but is something that includes all of these things. It includes being able to dance and being able to bring Unangax and into poetry and into my scholarly works and into the classroom, and where all parts of my life have Unangax culture in it. And I'm able to just center everything that I do around being Unangax. And that's when I feel whole. When I'm I was in the military, right? And when I was in the military, I felt so not well, right? My being wasn't fulfilled and it wasn't nourished because I had to leave everything Unangax behind me. And I just came back, and that's when I jumped back into the culture. I was like, I'm going to learn to skin sew. I'm going to learn to bead. I'm going to start dancing again, and I'm going to teach the kids, and I'm going to learn Unangax. And I've been doing that for the last 8 years, like nonstop. And I've never felt more whole being able to do these things and being able to spend my summers on the water. I think that's a big part of it for me.
Awesome. Thank you both. I'll ask one more question and then we'll open it up because there are a couple questions from the audience. So the last question is, do you have any advice for other Indigenous peoples wanting to learn their own traditions or start beading, sewing, dancing, or anything that falls within their own culture? So just any advice for people wanting to learn?
I just pursue them to because there's like a lot of opportunities for like online learning, different workshops, like TCC puts on different workshops for and the Morris Thompson Center for beading, for skin sewing, they have a lot of different workshops. I think there's just so much opportunity to learn. Even on YouTube, there's tutorials on YouTube, and then to sit with people that know how to do these things and ask them questions. When I first started beading again after not beading since I was a kid, I followed a lot of people on social media to see what they were doing and see how they were doing it. I watched videos on YouTube. I'd ask my mom about different beliefs that we have. Like I had to, for one of our beliefs is that we don't sew after someone passes and until their funeral. So I had to learn different things like that. Like I can't sew during those times. There are things that you can, like I was able to do to that allowed me to sew during that time. Like they said that I would have to put a needle through moose fat or put a needle through fish skin, and then I could sew. So it's just learning the different beliefs around what you're doing and just going for it.
Thank you, Blanche. Haliehana?
Yeah, I would just echo what Blanche said, and not to let fear or thinking that you don't belong or anything like that, like thinking that perhaps because even if you didn't grow up at home in your village or around your people, thinking that because of that you can't learn, you can and you should. Yeah, so I would just say like not letting fear control you and just giving it a try.
Thank you. I lost my mute button for a second. Yeah, and I think that's a really important question and great responses, because I was on a youth and elders discussion, and some of the youth were talking about wanting to learn things like traditional tattooing and just other things that they were interested in, but maybe it wasn't really spoken about in their families or their communities. And they were really wanting to like make a connection to learn and do it. So I really love both of what you both said about, taking the initiative, but also, finding those people who are willing to teach you and be open and talk story with you to help you understand the significance of different things and the ways we do things and why. So thank you both so much. I noticed that there was a question in the chat, and it says, how might white writers who live on Native lands and write about the natural world be cognizant of and avoid cultural appropriation. And I'll just open it up to either one of you.
I guess I can share. That's a really tough question because I mean, it's hard because it's not like a black or white answer. I think the best thing you can do always as non-native people or people with different identities that allow you different access to power or privilege than other people, the native people on native lands, is to use that power and privilege to lift up the voices and movements of other people, and to do work in a way that does not follow those extractive legacies of some fields of study that might look at Indigenous peoples as sites of extraction to write on or about. Instead, you can follow a with, by, and for approach, which is something that Sonia Adelaide, she's an archaeologist, she writes about in her work. It's like, how do you create things with Native communities, by Native communities, and for Native communities? So that's something that I am constantly trying to do for my community too, and not just like exploit Unangax knowledges. Like everything that I do, I want to do it in a really intentional way. So I think this is something that everyone is constantly thinking about, like how do we share while being extremely intentional.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Blanche, did you want to add anything?
I think just giving credit where credit's due. Like if you learn something from someone, then make sure, like Haliehana was saying, citing her work, you cite your work.
Awesome. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? You can raise your hand or you could write it in the chat. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking through the chat. In closing, I wanted to give you each a moment to just share any closing thoughts, anything like events you're going to be doing, or any just words of advice for all of us listening. Please feel free to share any closing thoughts. Blanche?
I don't really have any events right now. I have sales like almost every week or every 2 weeks and I post about it on my social media, and I sell through my website. I haven't done any in-person events for any like vendor events since before the pandemic, and I kind of like doing it online because it's cheaper than buying a table, and it allows me to do it in my own time. I do miss in-person sales though. Other than that, I'm just trying to finish up this semester. So I haven't been beading as much as I'd like to. Next semester, I'm going to be doing part-time so that I can spend more time doing my art, because I feel like I really need it to be like, it helps me be calm and relaxed, and I'm not like as stressed with my beading. So I want to focus more on my own art.
Thank you. Haliehana?
Yeah. Oh man, Blanche, I keep trying to get a pair of your earrings, but they sell out so quickly. I've like put it in my calendar and everything, and I look, but I'm stocking for a pair of earrings, which I hope to get sometime soon. And so I love that you're doing this online, because I can buy in Anchorage. let's see, some closing thoughts. I would just like to thank you, Dr. Jessica and Maggie, for hosting this panel. I think what a great, I just love that you focused on creativity and well-being. I think that's so important, especially as we like try to finish out this semester. It's important to ground ourselves in like what it means to be whole and to feel healthy. Let's see. So I saw a question in the chat from Cheryl about my past performances. I have some stuff on my website. I'm working on finding a way to curate more of my performances, and I just need to do that and put it on my website, but I haven't done that yet. I have one of my conference presentations that I collaborated with on there that you could go and look at. I love that piece because it's a collaboration across like Indigenous America, and it was so fun to make. And I'm also teaching next semester. I'm teaching 3 classes at UAA, and one of them is Unangax, and another one is Music of Alaska Natives, which I love. It's so fun for me. And then Alaska Native Perspectives. So I don't have any performances set up right now. I will be conducting my dissertation research starting next month, so I'm going to be pretty bound up in that for the next like year. So Koyukuk.
I saw a question about if I'll be selling. I don't have any bizarre events planned, someone asked. And I am registered with the Silver Seal. I don't really, I haven't been giving them out. Only like once in a while, I give out those silver hands that I have that. So.
Thank you both. So must go from the bottom of my heart. You both are amazing, inspiring leaders, and someone both of you I look up to, and I'm just so honored to spend the hour with you. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Maggie. Masicho.
Yeah, thank you so much, all 3 of you, for sharing. This is a really beautiful event, and I'm so happy to learn from all of you. I enjoy your art, and I enjoy your words a lot as well. So thank you for sharing. Just for our attendees, thank you so much for being here and giving us your hour. We will follow up with an email that will have links where you can learn more about Haliehana and Blanche and follow them on all the social medias and see their work. There'll also be a recording of the event that we'll share. I dropped it in the chat, but if you're feeling, if this event is inspiring your creativity, the Nanook Diversity and Action Center is hosting a beading shop with Linda Nicolia tonight in the Brooks Building at 6 p.m. And I encourage anyone who would love to learn to bead to attend that. And there are also a lot more amazing events happening for Native American Heritage Month. And the Interior Alaska has one coming up next week on centering indigeneity in the classroom, Nothing About Us Without Us. She'll talk about our Drumbeats Consortium project. I think it's going to be a really powerful conversation, and I will drop the registration link for that in the chat. Thank you all so much for being here, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Koyukuk.
Nena Halia, see you later.